when the lawyer opened my uncle's will. My mom leaned back in her chair like she already owned the place. "Relax, Emma," she laughed. "We're family. Of course, we'll all share the millions." My dad sat beside her, nodding like the money was already in his pocket. The last time they had looked that sure of themselves, I was 16 and they were walking out of our tiny rental, leaving an empty fridge, a dead phone, and a note that basically said, "You'll figure it out." I did figure it out, just not the way they expected. My name is Emma, and when my parents left me hungry and alone at 16, the only person who showed up was my uncle. He took me in, pushed me harder than anyone ever had, and helped me build a life where the lights stayed on because I paid for them myself. Years later, that life is the reason I was sitting in a conference room in downtown Chicago, staring at the two people who had thrown me away, now pretending they had lovingly raised me. My mom smiled at the lawyer, that bright fake smile she used to save for church ladies and lottery tickets. "Haha, we're family, right?" she said, "let's not make this complicated." But it was already complicated. The lawyer cleared his throat, flipped to the final page, and started reading a part of the will my parents didn't even know existed. Their smiles froze before he finished the first sentence. They thought they had walked into easy money. They had no idea my uncle had left one last trap in the form of a secret clause. Stay with me, because what he wrote there didn't just ruin their payday, it blew up their entire lives. Before my parents walked out, our life in that little town by Lake Michigan looked normal from the outside. We had cheap barbecue grills in the driveway, neighbors who waved from their porches, and summer evenings with the sound of kids riding their bikes past our window. Inside our house, it was a different story. My dad, John, was supposed to be a mechanic at the local garage, but most weekends he disappeared to the casino and came back smelling like beer and desperation. My mom Sarah used to work at the grocery store, then slowly stopped showing up. She spent her days sunk into the couch, scrolling on her phone or watching reality shows, barely noticing when I came or went. At first, we still had our little traditions. Pancakes on Sunday mornings, movies on the couch with whatever snacks we could afford. Then the arguments about money got louder, bills piled up on the kitchen counter. The fridge went from full to half full to almost empty. Mom would wave her hand toward the pantry and say, "There's ramen. You'll be fine." So, I got a job at the ice cream shop after school, scooping cones for kids who never had to worry if there'd be dinner that night. I handed my paycheck to my mom, hoping it would help. It disappeared into bills and gas and my dad's casino trips. One Tuesday morning in winter, I woke up to a silence that felt wrong, even for our house. No TV, no dishes clinking, no fake arguments about whose turn it was to buy groceries. The bed in their room was made, which never happened. The closet doors were half open, and most of their clothes were gone. In the kitchen, the fridge light glowed over a carton of milk gone sour and a few wilted vegetables. On the table, there was a single folded piece of paper with my name on it. "Emma, we can't do this anymore. Your uncle will take care of you. We're sorry. Take care of yourself." I stared at the words until they blurred. There was no money, no plan. Their phones went straight to voicemail. By day 3, the landlord was banging on the door, demanding rent I could never pay. When I said my parents were gone, he looked at me like I was lying. "You're 16, he said. "You can't just stay here alone. Either you pay or I call someone." In the end, I was the one who called. I went to the school counselor's office, hands shaking, and told her everything. Within hours, a woman from social services showed up at the apartment with a clipboard and calm eyes. She listened, took photos of the empty fridge, the note, the unpaid bills. Then she said, "We've contacted a relative. He's agreed to take you in." That was the first time I heard his name spoken like it mattered to me. Henry, my dad's older brother, the one they always called distant, obsessed with money and computers, the one they said forgot what real life looks like. When he arrived, he didn't hug me or ask how I felt. He just glanced around the apartment at the peeling paint and the sagging couch, then looked at me. "Pack what you need," he said. "Anything you actually use. We're leaving today." I grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed in some clothes, my school notebooks, and the only photo I had of us from before. Everything fell apart. As I stepped out of that apartment and into his sleek black car, I had no idea if I was being rescued or just relocated. All I knew was that my parents were gone, and a man who barely knew me had decided I was now his responsibility. Chicago didn't feel real the first time I saw it. The highway lights, the endless glass towers in the distance, the way everything moved faster than my thoughts. Henry drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, the car humming so quietly I could hear my own heartbeat. When we finally turned off the main road into a quiet suburb, I thought he had made a wrong turn. The houses here had manicured lawns, fresh paint, and driveways without cracks. His place looked like something from a tech magazine. Clean lines, big windows, a front door that probably cost more than our old car. Inside, everything smelled like coffee and something expensive I couldn't name. "Show off at the door," he said, already towing out of his. "We keep things clean here." "Okay," I muttered, clutching my duffel like a shield. He showed me a guest room that was suddenly my room with a real bed, a desk, a closet that wasn't already full of someone else's life. "You'll start school here," he said. "But first, we're going to get some structure in place." That was Henry's favorite word, structure. Over the next few days, he laid out my new life like a project plan. Wake up at 6:30, breakfast at 7, school, homework. 1 hour every night learning something useful. His words usually through some online course about coding, time management, or cybersecurity basics. Dinner at 7 sharp. No phones at the table. No staying up all night scrolling. If I broke a rule, he didn't yell. He just adjusted my privileges like he was tweaking settings on a computer. Late to dinner? No Netflix for the week? Used his work laptop without asking. Wi-Fi access only in the kitchen in plain sight. "That's not fair," I snapped once when he cut off my social media for 3 days. "Life isn't fair," he said calmly, not looking up from his email. "But actions still have consequences. I'm teaching you to control the part you can." I tried to push back. I forgot the dinner time. I pretended not to hear my alarm. I snapped at him for treating me like some employee he had to manage. He never raised his voice. He just kept rearranging the consequences until it was easier to follow the rules than fight them. Little by little, the house stopped feeling like a hotel and started feeling like something scary or stable. On Saturdays, he sometimes took me to his office downtown. While he sat in glass-walled conference rooms talking about contracts and security audits, I sat in a corner chair with my homework pretending not to listen. But I watched the way he worked, how he stayed quiet when other people argued. How he asked 1 or 2 questions that changed the direction of the whole meeting. On the drive home one day, I asked, "How did you know that guy was lying about those numbers?" Henry glanced at me through the rearview mirror. He looked at the table when I mentioned penalties. He said, "People who are telling the truth get annoyed when you doubt them. Liars get nervous." It was the closest thing to a life lesson he'd ever given me. One night, a few weeks after I moved in, I was sitting on my bed scrolling through old photos on my cracked phone. There weren't many, but the few we had were loaded with ghosts. My parents smiling over pancakes. My dad with his arm around me at a school play. Things that felt fake now. My eyes burned and my chest got tight. And before I could stop it, the tears came. I didn't hear Henry at the door until he spoke. "Emma." I jumped and wiped my face with the back of my hand. "I'm fine," I said automatically. He didn't argue. He just walked in, set a box of tissues on the nightstand, and sat in the desk chair across from me. He didn't ask what was wrong or tell me it would all be okay. He didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. 10 minutes. 20 long enough for the worst of the storm inside my chest to pass. When I finally looked up, he stood. "You have school tomorrow," he said. "Try to sleep. We'll talk about getting you into a better program soon. You can do more than just survive." After he left, I lay there staring at the ceiling. My parents had left me with a note and an empty fridge. Henry had given me rules, routines, and a quiet chair in the corner of my sadness. I still didn't fully trust him, but for the first time, my life had a shape. I had no idea that structure was his way of building me into someone who could stand on her own with or without him. Henry did not believe in doing the bare minimum for anything, including my education. A few weeks after I'd settled into his house, he slid a thick packet across the dinner table while I ate pasta. "Placement tests," he said, "you're not staying at the local public school. You're capable of more." I wanted to roll my eyes, but when I flipped through the papers, there was a small unexpected spark inside me. The questions were hard, but not impossible, like someone was finally expecting me to use my brain instead of just survive another day. A month later, I was walking through the glass doors of Lakeside Academy, a private school in Chicago, where the parking lot was full of SUVs, and kids talked about their summer internships like it was normal. My thrift store jeans and worn backpack stuck out immediately. In my old school, just showing up counted as effort. Here, teachers handed out project rubrics that looked like corporate reports, and students argued with them using words like data-driven and competitive advantage. My schedule was brutal. Advanced math, computer science, English lit, group projects that lasted weeks. I swallowed my pride and showed Henry my first round of grades, which were solidly average. "I'm not like these kids," I muttered. "They've had tutors since they were 5. He scanned the report card, then set it down. "Good," he said. "Now you know the gap. Data is only useful if you act on it." Instead of sympathy, he gave me structure again. We built a study schedule hour by hour. If I wanted extra screen time or a ride somewhere, I had to show him my progress. When I nearly failed my first coding project, he didn't tell me I was smart and special. He sat me at the kitchen table with his laptop and said, "Show me your errors." We went line by line until I understood what I'd done wrong. "Failure is not a verdict," he said, closing the laptop. "It's feedback. Use it." Slowly, things shifted. I formed a small study group after class with a few students who didn't roll their eyes when I took notes like my life depended on it. I stopped flinching when teachers called on me. By senior year, I was near the top of my computer science class, which still felt unreal for the girl who used to do homework with the TV blasting in the background. Then came college applications. I circled safe schools on the list, places close to Chicago where I could stay near the only stability I'd known. Henry circled names I thought were out of my league: Stanford, MIT. "You're insane," I told him. "Those schools are for geniuses or people whose parents donate buildings and for kids who clawed their way up from nothing," he replied. "Which category you choose is up to you." We argued. I said I didn't want to leave. He said comfort was a terrible reason to stay small. One night, after a particularly bad fight, he sat at the edge of the dining table and told me something he'd never said clearly before. My father, his brother, had once been brilliant at anything mechanical. He could have been an engineer, an inventor, Henry said, but he chose quick money, gambling, shortcuts. "I watched him waste every chance he had," Henry said quietly. "I'm not going to watch that happen twice." I applied. Months later, an email popped up on my phone while I was studying in the library. I opened it and stared. Accepted. Stanford. Full of palm trees and opportunity and a future that didn't involve looking over my shoulder for overdue bills. Henry read the letter in silence, then handed me a new laptop a week later. "Tool, not a toy," he said. "Use it to build something." College was another shock, but this time I was ready. I carried Henry's voice into every group project, every late-night hackathon, every networking event where I felt out of place. I interned at startups in Silicon Valley and learned to speak the language of investors and founders. When I graduated, offers came in from tech companies on both coasts. I turned them down. Instead, I flew back to Chicago, walked into Henry's office, and told him I wanted to work for him. "Then you're not my niece at work," he said. "You're part of the team. You'll start at the bottom and earn every step." I did. I coded, stayed late, made mistakes, fixed them, led small teams, then bigger ones. By the time I was 28, I was running major projects, helping shift our company into cloud security and AI, the kind of moves that made investors pay attention. It was a strange kind of full circle. The girl nobody wanted had become a woman listened to. I thought that meant the past was finally just a story I'd outgrown. I had no idea how quickly life was about to remind me that nothing stays stable forever. The night everything shifted started out painfully normal. I came home late from the office, still wired from a big client presentation, and found Henry at the dining table with 2 plates already set, steak and roasted vegetables cooling on white porcelain. He never waited to eat. If you were late, that was your problem. That night, he did. You're 5 minutes behind schedule, he said. But there was no real bite to it. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the way we often did, both of us replaying our days in our heads. Then he put his fork down, folded his hands, and looked at me in a way that made my chest go tight. Emma, he said. I got some test results back. I laughed once weakly. You go to the doctor. He didn't smile. Pancreatic cancer. Late stage, they can't cure it. They can only slow it down. The words felt like they belonged in someone else's life, not mine. I stared at him, waiting for him to say it was a dark joke. Henry didn't joke. Okay, I said finally because my brain couldn't come up with anything better. So, what do we do? His answer was the most Henry thing he could have said. We treat it like a project, he replied. Within days, he had a color-coded folder on the kitchen counter filled with appointment schedules, treatment options, and research articles. I sat beside him in hospital waiting rooms while he read through documents like they were contracts, asking doctors pointed questions about risk and reward. Chemo days became part of our new schedule. I drove him to one of the top cancer centers in Chicago, kept a notebook of symptoms and side effects, and argued with insurance reps on the phone when they tried to deny coverage for something his doctors said he needed. At home, I shifted his diet, learned how to cook food he could actually tolerate, and kept track of his meds like they were production servers I couldn't let fail. At work, the shift was even bigger. Henry started handing me responsibilities he had always kept for himself. First it was a few client meetings he was too tired to attend. Then it was entire projects, then budget approvals, then strategy calls with investors. You're already doing the work, he told me one afternoon as we sat in his office, the city skyline glowing behind him. We might as well make it official. He reminded me of something that had happened years earlier when I had just turned 18. He had taken me to the courthouse on a gray Monday with no explanation, handed me a pen, and signed a stack of papers that legally made him my adoptive father. You're not an extra mouth to feed, he'd said back then. You're my responsibility. This just matches the paperwork to reality. Now facing the kind of timeline no one wants. He was doing the same thing with the business and everything else. Matching the paperwork to reality. The company will be fine in your hands. He said, you understand how it works and why it works. That's more than I can say for half the people in this building. His body got weaker, but his brain stayed sharp for longer than I expected. Some nights he would sit in his recliner with a blanket over his legs, laptop open, listening while I walked him through quarterly numbers and staffing plans. Other nights he would close the laptop and ask me about things he had never had time for before. Are you happy here? He asked once. Not with the company, with your life. I thought about the girl in the empty apartment with the rotten milk and the note on the table. Yeah, I said. I am because of you. A small tired smile touched his mouth. Good. Then I didn't screw it up completely. 10 months after that first conversation at the dinner table, Henry died at home just like he wanted. No machines, no hospital room, just the quiet hum of the house and my hand holding his. The funeral was small and efficient like Henry himself. A few relatives I barely knew. A lot of coworkers and clients with polished shoes and red eyes. People told stories about his toughness, his discipline, the way he could stare at a contract and see the one line no one else noticed. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't talk about business. I talked about a man who had walked into a failing life and refused to let it fail. About pancakes replaced by structure, chaos replaced by plans, survival replaced by purpose. After everyone left, I stood alone by the grave for a long time, my breath clouding in the cold air. The person my parents called cold and distant had been the only one who showed up. A few weeks later, when the rawest edge of the grief had dulled into something heavy and constant, the phone rang in my office. It was Henry's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, asking me to come in for the reading of the will. I assumed it would be simple. Henry had never been sentimental about money. He saw it as a tool, like the laptop he bought me when I got into Stanford. I figured there would be some legal language about the house, the company, maybe a charitable donation or two. I did not expect to walk into that conference room, sit down at the long polished table, and see my mother and father already there, dressed like they were about to close a deal. For the second time in my life, my past had arrived without warning. This time, it was staring at the fortune Henry had left behind, and acting like it already belonged to them. For a second, I thought I'd walked into the wrong office. My mother was sitting at the long conference table in a navy dress she definitely hadn't bought at our old discount mall. Her hair smoothed back, makeup done like she was going on TV. My father wore a gray suit that didn't quite fit, but he tugged at the cuffs like he was used to it. They both turned when I came in. "Emma," my mom said loud and bright like we met for brunch every week. "You look successful." My dad gave a little awkward laugh. "We're so proud of you, kiddo." Proud. The word tasted sour. Mr. Thompson, the lawyer, motioned for me to sit. I took a chair on the opposite side of the table from them. The thick folder in front of him had Henry's name on the tab. My mother leaned back, looking around the polished room, then at me. "You must be so overwhelmed," she said, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "It's a lot. The house, the company, all the what did you call it?" She glanced at my father. "Assets," he supplied, nodding. "Yeah, the assets." She smiled at me like we were co-conspirators. "Don't worry, we're family. We'll figure it out together. We'll all share the millions." Right there it was. No warm-up, no apology, not even a real hello. Just straight to the money. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses, his face neutral. "If everyone is ready, I'll begin." He read through the boring parts first. Henry's full name, the dates, the legal language about capacity and intent. My parents barely listened. They were waiting for the numbers. When he finally got there, the room shifted. The primary residence, the lake house, various investment accounts, and then the big one. 80% of the shares in the cybersecurity company Henry had built from scratch, which the valuation summary put well into the tens of millions. My parents' eyes grew round, then greedy. "And all of that," Mr. Thompson said, "is left to Emma Harper in full." The silence that followed was almost funny. My mother blinked, catching up. My father frowned like he'd misheard. "I'm sorry," my dad said finally. "All of it? That can't be right. We're his family." My mother recovered faster, leaning forward, folding her hands. "We don't want to be difficult," she said. "But obviously, we're going to be involved. We should manage this together. She's still young, handling millions. Requires guidance." That word made something in me snap. "Guidance?" I repeated. "Is that what you call walking out when I was 16 and leaving me with a rotten carton of milk and a note?" My mother's smile twitched, but she kept it plastered on. "We were struggling," she said quickly. "We knew your uncle would help. We did what was best for you." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat softly, drawing the focus back to him. "There are some additional provisions," Mr. Harper insisted I address if the situation occurred. That got their attention. "What situation?" my dad demanded. The lawyer opened a second folder, thinner, but somehow heavier. "First," he said, looking directly at them. 9 years ago, when Emma turned 18, Mr. Harper formally adopted her. Legally, she is his daughter, his sole heir. He let that sit for a moment. "You are, in the eyes of the law, her biological parents, but you have no automatic claim to his estate. You are not his dependent, nor are you named anywhere as beneficiaries." My father's face flushed red. "He stole our kid," he snapped. "We never agreed to that." Mr. Thompson pulled out a document and slid it across the table toward them. "You signed the consent forms," he said evenly. "I have your signatures on file. You received a copy at the time." My mother's eyes flicked over the paper, then she shoved it back. "We didn't understand what we were signing," she said. "We thought it was temporary guardianship." "It was not," the lawyer replied. And even if it were, your actions afterward made the court's decision quite simple. He opened another file, this one full of printed emails. Mr. Harper also asked that if necessary I disclose the communications he received from you over the years, requests for money, threats to show up at his office, demands that he share what he owed you or you would, and I tell everyone what kind of person he really is. As he read the line, my mother shot to her feet. Those were private. She snapped. You can't just.